Hello and welcome to another episode of the Healing with Coherence podcast series, founded by Radiant Life Technologies. My name is Michael and I'm your host today. This is episode 6 of this series, delving into the profound transformation of healing science, medicine, and technology happening in the world today. And you can find us on all major podcast platforms and social media networks. So if you are not yet part of our community, hit subscribe or follow right now and don't miss the news. My guest today is Lola Goski. Hello, Lola. Welcome to the Healing with Coherence podcast.
Hi, Mikhail. Nice to be here.
Thank you very much for taking the time to be my guest today. And to introduce Lola, Lola lives and works in Western Canada. She is a physical therapist, practitioner of traditional Chinese medicine, a craniosacral therapist, and we'll be talking with Lola today about her path as a therapist and healer, her outlook on holistic healing and health, and her approach in integrating coMra therapy into her practice. Lola, introducing you as a therapist, and you have a very rich career of a therapist in very different areas, which I mentioned. What actually led you to embark on a path of a therapist? Was it a coincidence? Was it a conscious choice? Or did just fate somehow led you there?
Well, that's an interesting question because I have to go back just about half a century to answer that. And if my memory serves me correctly, I didn't consciously choose it. I kind of fell into it because I was searching for something as a career, and it sounded good. Physical therapy was my primary or my first training. And about halfway through my course, I decided I think I must be in the wrong place because this is too hard. But I was over halfway through, so I just finished it. So if I could say it was a calling, it would be probably not accurate. However, I did find that I was very, very drawn to helping people, drawn to wellness in general from a very early age. I always knew that that was something that I wanted to explore. So as the years progressed, about halfway through my physio career, I was starting to notice that I was a little sort of confused by why people weren't healing or why they would come, for treatment after treatment and somehow not be where they wanted to be. So I started to get curious, but I really didn't get my shove into holistic medicine until 1990, when our family was in a very serious car accident. And we were very challenged at that time. Our son was very, very badly injured, and all of us were very emotionally hurt. And all I was offered was medication to treat his problems, and I just felt that there was more. So I started to explore the world of acupuncture, and I was again kind of pushed into that. I went to see an acupuncturist myself because I was having some physical symptoms that didn't seem to have any real physical basis, and learned later that it was completely and totally a stress response kind of condition. So as I was being treated for that, I was also being encouraged by this acupuncturist to study acupuncture. And I resisted that because I thought, my goodness, I'm overwhelmed with life right now. How can I possibly study a university course? This is too much. But there was gentle persuasion and a vision that this person had, my first mentor, that I didn't have, and I continued. So I became an acupuncturist at the time and studied traditional Chinese medicine. And I began to discover truly what holistic medicine was. So even though it wasn't a conscious choice on my part, I was being guided and kind of nudged and moved toward this. And because I have the mind that I want to make sure I don't miss anything, I also embarked on a craniosacral course of study because I didn't want to miss anything, because I still, after all, a body-centered therapist. body focused. So I kind of did the parallel tracks at the same time and ended up with, you know, three different careers all at the same time, as you mentioned. So then I found myself saying, well, I can just pick and choose whatever works best for whoever's asking for help. So that's kind of how it evolved. But to say consciously chosen, and am I a from birth therapist? Probably not. So I'm very grateful for the teachers along the way who recognized that I needed to kind of move in direction. So that's how I arrived where I arrived. And it might be interesting to say at this point that I don't think of myself as a therapist. I know there's limited words in the work I do: healer, therapist, guide. Over time, I think I've morphed from therapist to guide, and now into what I would call companion in healing process. So compassionate healer, or compassionate guide, or just compassionate companion is how I would, if I had to write my job description, I would say.
Wow.
So I don't know if that comes around to answering how I got into it, but pushed, shoved, and in some ways my own incentive. But yeah.
I see. Well, I guess that's in most cases how I think the life path of many people develops. But on the other side, I can see as well that it's been somehow you've been led there, but you've been also consciously making choices to go this way. So you've been supported. But you said a very interesting thing, which I would like to explore a little bit deeper. So you don't see yourself as a therapist, but more of a guide and companion. And I have two questions there. First of all, how this transformation has happened to you? Have you been always approaching therapy like that? And second of all, what is the difference between being a therapist and being a guide, or being a healer and being a guide?
Right. Well, again, this has been an evolution over a number of years. I would love to have really large, inspired moments, but for me, learning comes slowly through experience. I'm glad to say my patients, who I now call friends, it's really the words are limited, have really been the best teachers. They have been my teachers. So over time, I've come to understand something, is that when we call ourselves therapists, or I'm a therapist, or I'm a healer, it fits into a hierarchy. Because for me, this is my own personal opinion on this, is that we put ourselves in a position of knowing more than perhaps our patient. And I've come to understand that my patient knows way more about their own system and their own body and what heals them than I could ever imagine, because nobody, I don't think, understands how the body even works to start with, right? We might understand our technology, we might understand our particular technique, but we have no idea what actually happens with that information when it's presented or received or rejected, for that matter, from that body, by that body. So I came to understand very early on that I had to put aside, excuse me, any notion that I knew better or knew something that was beyond the intelligence of the system in front of me. So I switched from therapist to guide, because I could say, well, I've been through this forest before, so I can show you a few ways that might be easier, you know, in terms of signposts or guideposts. But for me to say, I know what's right for you, or what you must do with you and your system, would be a little too arrogant from my perspective. So I switched to guide. And then from guide, I thought, well, sometimes the guide gets lost, right? So the guide has to trust that there's another, even more intelligent system at play. And then we could, you know, talk spiritual, we could talk the field of all knowledge, you know, we can go into different descriptions of it. But the reality is, I learned very early to set aside whatever notion I had of thinking about what I knew, into trying to go into that place of knowing from a heart sense, from a heartfelt sense. So that's kind of where I went through the transition of what do I call myself. And I think in the danger of labeling anything, right, we restrict it. So that's partly why I struggled with what I call myself. So by many names, that's how I arrived at compassion, trying to be in the presence of the suffering, as you mentioned, pain, which most people present with. Most people don't present when they're really happy and everything's going well. Although I do have clients that do that, so they stay that way. Right? So it's a very, very interesting discovery that I've made of myself, is that I don't know anything really and truly about anyone else, but I'm willing to explore the possibilities.
That's in overall, I think that's a fantastic approach, because what it means is that you are taking your cooperation with your clients, which you call friends, as a mutual evolution or development. So you are using every interaction with every client of yours as a possibility for you to evolve together with him or with her.
Right. It really is a mutual experience, a mutual affair. I call it enlightened self-interest. We want an exchange more than we want a one-way street. We want a mutual experience. And actually, I said friends, but I think it would be better to say my fellow humanity. Friends, because we're not all friends necessarily in the sense that we all know each other, but in my common humanity, I think is how I would say it.
Lola, when or just explain for my own understanding, physical therapist is the same, I guess, like it's physiotherapy, right? Or
yes.
So it is manual manipulation of the body construction, muscles, tendons, and so on, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then when it comes to Chinese medicine and craniosacral therapy, and from what you just were explaining, what I'm sensing is that probably your choice or choices you've made with the therapies you used are also, or have been going along with your deepening of your understanding of how healing works, because physical therapy is something which is very much manipulation of the physical side of the human being. But from my understanding, Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and craniosacral therapy, which is as well physical manipulation, but on a very, very subtle level, goes much deeper beyond the physical. Do you see that as well, what I'm sensing, this parallel in your choice of therapies?
Absolutely. As a physical therapist, I can just start with that, is that my experience has been that over 80% of people who come to see physical therapists for whatever their problem don't have a real reason for it. I mean, they say they have a condition or they have, a diagnosis, but there's no real reason for it per se. I mean, if you've been in an accident, obviously you've got reason to have pain or to have that disability. But chronic pain often falls into the category of there's no real explanation for why it's persisted. So I got curious about what that 20% was. What was it that healed people? What were the components of healing? I was more interested in that than why people didn't heal, if I could say it that way. I was curious about the healthy people. Why are they healthy? And why are these people not healthy? So it was kind of a reverse of what allopathic medicine looks at it. It looks at the problem and then tries to remedy it. I was more curious about what makes people well. What happens in a system that actually heals one person from an accident and another not. So that was kind of more the bent. So when I was introduced into traditional Chinese medicine, it just opened up my understanding, as we were too narrowly focused in the traditional, or I should say conventional, physical therapy model. And traditional Chinese medicine, for me, it was like exploring a garden. It suddenly became, whoa, there's a whole system at work here. It's all relative. There's a relativity always. There's never an absolute. Too much sun produces this result. Not enough sun produces this result. Too much water, you get the metaphor. And so I started to think of my system, or my patient systems, as gardens. So was there too much water in their system? Was there not enough water? Is there too much sun? Is there not enough sun? So it became, for me, more naturally fitting with everything, with nature, with my surroundings, my environment. Is it too much this, not enough that? So it became a whole, I want to say, a complete picture, or more complete picture for me, because it represented more of what nature was, or a natural way of being was. And then craniosacral therapy came in because I'm one of my mentors described me once like a bit of a feather in a wind. I would go wherever the most interesting topic was. So I got interested in craniosacral. Oh, that's interesting. So I went over there. And then I realized it wasn't an accident, because I needed a holistic approach to the body along with this traditional Chinese medicine. And I'll refer to it as TCM because traditional Chinese medicine gets cumbersome.
Yeah.
So TCM, was sort of the medicine piece of it. And then the craniosacral part was the holistic coming into the body system. So craniosacral therapy is very subtle, and it suits me very well, because I think less is more. I'm sure you've heard that expression. Sometimes we come in with big hammers, big surgery, we're going to fix this problem. But if the body could fix itself, why wouldn't we use that already masterful system that was already in place? And that's where I got intrigued with the craniosacral system, which was already working, whether we knew about it or not, right? Another one of these things where we discover something. We're so, in the West, I think we get so excited about discovering things through science, but they've been there forever, and we just come into understanding them. Oh, there's a discovery. But this beautifully masterful system that's operating, whether we're aware of it or not, was something I wanted to, again, support or work with in an intelligent way. So I started to explore the combination of those two.
Mm-hmm.
And a perfect match, because it is the same body after all, right? Whether we call it a this or we call it a that, it's the same system, integrating in the same bigger system, which is part of the bigger system, which is the whole of whatever, creation. Yeah. So why wouldn't I go along for this free ride? I mean, it was brilliant and it was sensible to me. And that's where I launched into this holistic approach or way of looking at things. So
Can you expand a little bit on the craniosacral? I have experienced myself. I've been to a course many years ago, so I have a feeling about it. But can you explain a little bit for the listeners as well? Well, because I believe that with TCM, with physiotherapy, most people would be acquainted more than with the craniosacral. Can you explain a little bit more about the craniosacral?
Sure, absolutely. Again, it's another one of these mysterious systems where trying to describe it and explain it would probably not do it justice, but I'll do my best. So the cranium is the head. The sacral is basically the base of the spine. So the craniosacral system is everything from the head to the tail, basically. So your whole spinal, neurological, and structures in between. And what's, I think, fundamental to understanding craniosacral system is that we are a complexity of rhythms and forces that are moving very gently and quietly all the time to keep us alive. So we could talk, more about that, but not to get too complex. We have what's called a craniosacral rhythm, and it is literally the life force that flows through us again, from top to bottom. These are the structures that contain it. But this life force, I mean, is connected and communicates with all the forces. So it's, it connects with the forces above, call them heaven, call them universe, and as well with the earth. So we're connected through this life force of ever exchanging energy with through our bodies. It's like we're this big long battery or something where positive and negative forces are constantly interchanging. And the craniosacral system recognizes that we have bones in our body, in our head, that have a gentle movement always. And they're constantly moving the life force and moving the life fluids and energies, the craniosacral, the cerebrospinal fluid, all of these things are moving at a very gentle pace to sustain our life. And if you take that, and it was explained to me this way, is that we can grab a hold of this life force by holding the bones, if you like. It's kind of like holding the bell as it's reverberating, right? You're feeling the reverberation by holding the bell. You're not the bell, you're not the reverberation, but you're feeling that. And using that movement, again, in a, we'll say, guided way. If it's stuck this way a little bit, just guiding it back this way. So the very, very subtle movement. Craniosacral therapy is about following the body. It's not about forcing the body. It's about following the body into rhythms and then holding it. There's a lot of holding and waiting and pausing with craniosacral to let the body get, oh, I'm stuck here. Maybe I'll come around this way and just see if it feels better. So that's what I learned through craniosacral, is not to force, push, try and engineer the system. It was to simply allow it to return to its intelligent state of health and wellness, which is what we're geared for. Okay? coMra therapy talks about this a lot. We're geared to go back to what we intuitively, instinctively know as health and wellness with the right support. Yeah.
Lola, what do you think actually, because you mentioned now we can go back to this optimal, ultimate state of our being, but what makes us step out of that ultimate step or state, and what makes us what stops us usually from going back to that state? And this leads to my next question: why healing beyond the physical is needed in order to achieve a true healing and lasting healing?
Right. Well, again, big question, and one I've searched myself through the years. There are some obvious things why we step out of, and the big ones, I think, are trauma, toxins in this world. I think I've heard this before. Many people have said this. This is not new. This is not my new thinking. And the third is conditioning, or how we've been trained or conditioned to see world, see health, see us as a being. So we'll start with trauma. Trauma is a big one. I'm a trauma-informed therapist. I see unresolved trauma all the time, where people get stuck in a place, whether it's an emotional trauma, psychological, mental, physical, spiritual traumas. There's trauma right across the board. And how people are wounded and hurt is very much their own experience. Some people call it karma. You've got your life experience, and no matter how hard you try, you can't escape your life. Well, you can escape it, but it's not a like I can trade it in for something different. So like that, we have a certain amount of human experience that we have to experience. Same, as simply as that. So there's trauma, and as I say, my work has taken me really deeply into trauma awareness and I guess I want to say awareness, but also respect, because when a system is traumatized for whatever reason, it's traumatized on the very obvious level, but it's also deeper and more mysterious, if you like, why some people get certain things and other people don't, and two things happen. And like my mother, for instance, smoked for 55 years and died with healthy lungs. How can that be? Where someone else, so there's this mystery as well mixed into why trauma affects or comes into certain ways of being. Toxins are more obvious. We've got a fairly difficult environment that we're navigating. So that can get into the system, if you like, and unless it's remedied in a proper way, it can be very destructive and people can't get out of it. And then the third is the conditioning, which I'm very, very fascinated by as well, is how we're set up in life, like early. We get set up really early to respond to life in certain ways. And if anyone listening is familiar with attachment theory or any of those sort of psychological explanations for why we get set up, so why I might avoid things in life, whereas you might rush in head on, very much is determined by our early conditioning. So when I approach someone who's, we'll say, not able to get into their healing pattern, I want to explore on those three levels, which one of those is the primary or more likely to be the main obstruction. And that leads me down, many interesting roads sometimes. And sometimes, we get it and sometimes we don't. But there's always questions, or there's always answers if you ask the right question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you saying with just with the different words that healing on the physical level alone actually can, or rarely can bring lasting results? Maybe I see it as a way of bringing lasting results only on the very early outset of a physical disease, probably very early symptoms which you can treat physically or chemically, let's say, in allopathic medicine and pharmaceutics, and you can anyway actually get rid of the symptoms, but in a very early stage. And then for the next 10 years, 12 or 20 years, the symptoms will not come. But because you were talking about the conditioning as well, which is thought approach to life, if we don't change this approach to life and this thinking which has been causing this very early outset of symptoms, anyway, we are working on getting back to where we were, but maybe much worse condition, let's say.
Yes. So now you've entered the world into why things show up, or chronic problems. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And as you were speaking, Mikhail, I think what I wanted to say to that was we can heal from the physical up, or we can heal from the spiritual down. And it sounds hierarchical, but it's actually not. It's the same system. So we can come in on the physical and have a very spiritual experience. And coming from, we'll say, the more esoteric or more ethereal, we can have a very physical response. And so this for me is no longer a kind of an alignment or progression of it, because I have had wonderful experiences where people have healed all levels at the same time with just that spark of awareness. If you want, I can give you an example.
Sure, I do. Please do.
To support that. So I have, I'm going, on the off chance that this person listens to this, I'm going to try and make it more general. But I'm combining a couple of people so that it's not specifically one person. But it is like this sometimes. I had a young woman who was, I believe, 26 years old, came with pain, a 10-year-old pain. And I asked her when it started. She said, well, I was in an accident 10 years ago, and I've just still had this pain in my back ever since. Well, actually, it's in here into my shoulders. And it's really heavy in here into my shoulders. This was her way of describing it. And she'd been to a number of different therapists and a lot over 10 years, you can imagine. And how I work generally is I don't try and arrive at any conclusion too quickly, because usually I'm wrong. And then I have to try and retrace my steps. And I like to be right more than wrong. So, anyway, I got a t-shirt that says that. But anyway, I am listening to this young woman, and I'm thinking, you're 26 years old and you've had 10 years of pain. That is more than 2/3 of your, what is going on deeper for this person? So I said, what was going on for you at the time you had the car accident? Because by my estimation, with the therapy she had, she should have healed, right? Soft tissue heals usually with the best treatments in 6 to 12 weeks, right? She said, well, I was pregnant. And I did the math in my head, and I said, well, then you were 16 years old in a car accident. I'm guessing it wasn't what your life, how you decided your life was going to go. And she said, oh, absolutely not. It was horrible. So here she had this accident, physical injury. She had the horrors of being pregnant, and she had this whole shame piece of, that goes along with teenage pregnancy often. So I said to her, and she had a beautiful daughter, it was love. She had a loving relationship with her daughter. And I said, so if your daughter could speak, would she want you to carry this pain for as long as she's been alive because of the shame at the time of your accident? She said, well, absolutely not. And I said, well, what if that was the reason you couldn't lose this? And she just thought about it for a minute. And I said, well, let's do some work. So we did some physical release work, and I use a lot of different modalities and don't need to go into that. But within 3 sessions, she completely was healed. Now, 10 years versus 3 sessions, you have to say what was going on other than the key for understanding this in her system hadn't yet been introduced. In other words, everybody was doing all the right physical therapies. I didn't do anything magic in terms of physical therapy, but I introduced into her system the possibility that she held something stuck back there. I said, you are still holding the pain of the 16-year-old who is pregnant, who is ashamed, who is not supported well. It wasn't supported in the family, they went all along with that, right? I said that your 16-year-old is still holding the pain, but your 26-year-old wants it to go. She got it. The key went in the lock, turned, pain was gone. And that's the miracle of the body getting its own wisdom and intelligence into the right place at the right time. So if, you want to call that magic, I haven't studied magic, but I wouldn't call myself a magician, but yet it is pure magic. It is pure magic when it happens. So, yeah, I'm not sure what the question was, to be honest with you. Did I answer that?
Well, I love the answer.
Okay, good. You're so nice.
I love the answer because, this brought me to this realization that, okay, it's a magic, but I would call it probably a miracle. But also, because I've been lately exploring what actually miracles are, and it seems like that, of course, we all speak about miracle when something really great, extraordinary happens, and then we speak, about as well, like higher powers being involved and so on. But I think that, like miracles are happening every moment of our lives. And what you described now, I think there is a very clear explanation to that. If you come from the perspective that, we are not the hard substance and material that it seems that we are. because already quantum physics and everything has been scientifically proved that there is no hard matter as such, because on the smallest particles there is a space between them, and so on and so on, right? So, and it is all energy and frequency. And when you take that in account, that thought is a frequency as well, and this young woman, she has been having as if a radio on a very loud level playing in her head all the time, and in her body saying, you are bad, you are this and that, and for these 10 years you're not worthy, whatever. And she hasn't been realizing that, and she hasn't been having the means to switch on or to change the the station of the radio. I think it's just it makes absolute sense that actually that's the healing beyond the physical as well. Unfortunately, we are still kept into this, or we keep ourselves in this conditioning that no, the healing is only physical. We need pharmaceuticals, chemicals, whatever, in order to heal it. But yeah, in a way, I'm just adding to my question where we started probably 10-15 minutes ago, was why healing beyond the physical is needed, and we're still expanding on that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's coming of age, to be honest with you. You know, I've waited a long time in my own experience for this to be, because when you realize it, when you can, as a, we'll say, therapist, get yourself out of the way early enough, you can recognize that it isn't something you're doing. Because even the most amazing technologies we apply, like even the coMra would be an example.
Yeah.
We still, you know, it can be a brilliant instrument, but the body has to receive it, interpret it, use it, do what it will with it, right? It isn't the instrument itself that's doing it. It's the body that's receiving it and having a relationship with that energy and frequency, recognizing it. Probably, you know, again, we can go into frequency and energy. It's all the same, only at more subtle and more dense expressions, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you look at it that way, you can see like an immense amount of possibilities, because, you know, there's distance healing, there are people that can heal from far away. I mean, I've had this experience myself where physical presence is not necessary. So how do you explain that, right? So you have to go beyond, and I'm witnessing it being introduced much earlier, like in younger people, much younger than I am, even my own grandchildren. I cannot have talk to you for an hour long and not mention my lovely little grandchildren, who are my best teachers in terms of this new idea. Again, new idea. They already know it, and they have this ability as young as, you know, 5 years old, to be able to tap into that and not call it anything, not know what it is necessarily intellectually, but they're expressing it, and they're showing me all the time that healing and our experience is far more spiritual than it is physical. So again, to use the expression, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, really makes it, but we're just coming of age. You know, I used to think of it as spiritual understanding was more elevated and more whatever, and now I say no, hang on, that's just like saying grade 12 is more important than grade 1, right? Without the important foundation of there, you don't get to there. So it's all the same weight in terms of value, I guess I could say. But absolutely, Mikhail, you're spot on when you say we're moving out of this physical. And when you think of allopathic medicine, it's pretty young. It's like kindergarten, maybe, in terms of medicine and its ability. Not to say kindergarten isn't important. It can provide a lot of foundation. But healing medicines, holistic therapies have been on the planet as long as human beings. We know this from, if you'd want to do some research. So I think of allopathic medicine as kind of being more like, there's this thing that occurred to me one day in meditation. It was that we do research because we're really me searching. So it's me search, and then you do research, and then you do be search, and then you get free search, right? So you go through the and that's what I think we're doing in a lot of scientific pursuit or allopathic, is we're trying to research this to get to the be, to the me, and then to the be. So it's a young medicine, in my opinion, and it's changed back and forth so many times. It used to be you couldn't eat butter, now you can eat butter, you're this and now you're that. Whereas some of the traditional medicines have not changed since the beginning. And traditional Chinese medicine is like that. The same principles, the same remedies, same treatments, same prescriptions for thousands of years. So
yeah.
How do you argue it? I think allopathic medicine has its place, and we all say this. When I break my bone, I go, but I really feel that it is becoming more and more obvious and accepted to a lot more people that holistic therapy is preferable. And years ago, when I started in traditional Chinese medicine, there's actually there was a study done that, the study done that asked people anonymously to do a questionnaire. How many people exclusively saw their doctor? How many people did other things, and something like a third at this time, this is like decades ago, over a third of the people said they clandestinely sought other treatments. They did herbology or they did other things without telling their doctor, but they did them anyway. So I think the grassroots, or the human knowing, is emerging now to where it's no longer, in the closet. We don't have to be careful what we say. So many more people are saying, yeah, I went to my doctor and I told them I was doing acupuncture and this and this and this. They said, great, carry on, it's working for you, go for it. So I think we're coming of age, but it's a very slow, and it feels very arduous process.
This actually reminds me, because like just a few days ago, me and my wife, we watched that new movie of Martin Scorsese with Leonardo DiCaprio and with Robert De Niro about that case in the I think it was beginning of the 19th century or somewhere there. And it was around the relationship between the North Americans with the native inhabitants, with the native Indians in North America. And basically, this has kept me thinking about this ongoing relationship and the Native Americans and in their role in the society of the North American continent and civilization. And when this will be somehow resolved. And my feeling is actually it reflects what you were saying about the allopathic medicine and the holistic medicine as well, because holistic medicine has been holding a lot of wisdom, which has been created and built throughout the ages. Same like with the Native Americans, they have been holding this wisdom, which has been built throughout the ages. And there is this modern Western civilization which has been refusing to accept whatever actually this nation has been bringing them. But somehow, and maybe part of the society slowly have been accepting some parts of that. Many people have been opening to that wisdom. The same like with allopathic medicine. And at the moment when these two cultures actually somehow make a fusion, then there is something which, something new and very nice can be born out of it. But until the moment when, the more advanced civilization continues to hold on, we are more advanced and you are savages, and holistic medicine is a bullshit. There is nothing that it can bring us because we have all this technology and so on and so on. there is no chance that it will become actually truly inclusive at the end of the day, and will not be able to achieve and offer a lasting healing. It will offer only lasting, probably to a certain degree, suppression of symptoms. But yeah, I just felt that I want to express this comparison, because I say that, as I said, it's a topical area or topic for me these last few days, and I just saw the comparison there.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love how the entertainment industry can bring awareness in strange ways. You know, I think there's different ways that we get messages, and one of them is through entertainment. I had this experience myself where I get something, I watch a movie and I go, oh, you know, and there's this paralleling of forces, I guess, all happening at the same time. I like to think of them as rings. You know, you drop some water and you get this, they're all connected, interconnected. So there's this interrelatedness of things. And there's two things that you said, Mikhail, that I think are really, really critical. One of them is we have to bring the polarities together. We are one humanity. We are one, you know, commonality, if you like, in terms of our existence. We can't separate. But what unfortunately, I think, is it comes down to what I call a power struggle. The unhealthy or the toxic power structures that have existed for a very long time in duality and in polarities have us conditioned. Now this comes back, we've circled all the way back around to that third, you know, the trauma, toxin, and conditioning, is that we've learned, certainly from the Western perspective, to give our power outside of ourselves to something bigger and stronger, you know, even if it's God or something outside of ourselves, forgetting that we're part of that whole. So when the power goes out into something or somewhere else, we forget that we actually have the power within to heal, to connect, to create. We have all of that within us. And that's what I suppose, talking about from the healing perspective, is we have that power. But once it's given away, and I hear this over and over and over, the predictions that are made, there's nothing we can do. And that's oftentimes when people land up, they literally land. They don't, you know, they don't seek it necessarily. They just fall into holistic therapy because there's nothing else left from an allopathic perspective. But it's until we integrate the whole, and this is the theories of relativity, this is the theory of mutuality, this is the theory of relationship. We don't ever operate alone in anything. Yet in the Western mind, we're individuals, we're our own person, we have this notion that we can operate outside of a mutual agreement or mutual experience. And as soon as you step outside of that mutuality, you've stepped into, I think, the problems that we've created for ourselves in the West, which is, wars, autoimmune disease. I mean, we can go down that whole street if you like, but we're at war with ourselves within, we're at war outside. So we have to have this mutual agreement to get along or to cooperate. And that's why I've called myself this compassionate companion, because I want to be in cooperation with your system, coherently with your system, right? Your topic of your podcast is healing through coherence. Mm-hmm. If we're not coherent, we don't get the healing. So then we've got this power struggle going on that's always disproportionate. Someone's stronger, someone's weaker, something's stronger. The disease is stronger than my healing. We have to bring back in the integrative coherence, which is really interesting because my first teacher was trained, my first acupuncture teacher was trained in the East as a doctor of Oriental medicine, came to Canada and started training as an allopathic physician because his grandfather had the vision that unless you understand both, you cannot integrate them, because then it's an us or a them. So I've been blessed with having had my allopathic training first as a physical therapist, and then brought into the holistic world of Chinese medicine and craniosacral therapy. And it's been my life's work to integrate the two. So I fondly call myself a fringe or a border dweller, right? I walk between the two worlds and hopefully bring integration. And this might bring us to the topic of coMra therapy, because when I came upon it, I thought this fits perfectly. It's integrating both, right? It's science, it's technology, it's all that stuff I don't understand, but I don't need to, because it fits seamlessly with the principles. And I think when we distill it down to principles, the values, the things that are unchanging, the truths that are unchanging, the coMra therapy and I would say the energy behind the actual device is very coherent with the same principles of Chinese medicine and the other therapies that I've employed. So it was seamless. I've been asked this, why are you using this technology when you use acupuncture? And I said, well, because the principles behind it are congruous, meaning they're working with the body's own intelligence, body system. I couldn't add more to it. They just work well together. So when I went from not having the coMra therapy to integrating it in my practice, I just loved it. I got better results with less effort. And I think that's the bonus, right? It's like making money. If you can make more money with less effort, right?
Absolutely.
It's a win-win, right? So then I got curious why, right? So then I go back into how does it work and why does it work? And so some of that other stuff came in, but initially it was, okay, I'll try it. And my results were enhanced significantly. And then the added piece of saying to people, you can do this for yourself at home. And then they took, again, some of that power back and some of that ability to say, I can take charge of my health and work with my body's intelligence. And so I encouraged people to get their own if they could, and their healing processes. So I've got so many wonderful success stories that people have shared back about what they've done for themselves. Makes my heart sing, Michaela. I can't tell you how happy I am when I hear someone takes that beautiful thing called their own health and start to be their own physician, be their own guide, their own compassionate companion. Yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing up coMra therapy, because of course I'm very, very curious about your experience in incorporating coMra therapy into your practice, because you've been having a really long time experience already with coMra. For how long have you been working with coMra already?
Well, I try to thought that I think 10 years. I could be wrong. Could be maybe, but around 10 years, I think. And how I again fell into this now. It's kind of, we can mention names here, right? You can edit this out if you want. Our good friend Garrett.
Hi, Garrett.
Yeah, Garrett. We were friends, Garrett and Avril and another lady and ourselves. We're friends. We were just, we knew each other. And I was scheduled to have some surgery for a thumb. I had a problem with my thumb and I was scheduled for surgery. And I really needed, from a physical perspective, I needed to have surgery because I no longer could use it. So it was like a game changer for my work. I couldn't work. And so I was scheduled for this tendon release. And somewhere along the way, this friend Jane said, well, I've got this coMra, you should try it. It's good for pain and inflammation. I said, oh, yeah, sure, great. Okay, why not? Not totally convinced. But anyway, I did use it because I had a wait period. And so for 3 weeks, I used the coMra on my thumb, and the pain was considerably less. The inflammation went down. It was still structurally needed repair, but all of that happened. So I got curious, and I thought, well, okay, that is something I want to learn more about. After the surgery, I treated it again as per the protocols. And when I went back to the surgeon after, I think there was a 3-week and a 6-week follow-up or something like that. I went back after 3 weeks. He thought I was at the 6-week point of healing. He said, oh, you had your surgery, what, like a month and a half ago? And I said, no, like 2.5 weeks ago. He went, no. I said, yeah. And he said, wow, you're a great healer. And I said, yes, I am. And we went away happy with that. I knew that the coMra had enhanced my own healing process, right? It didn't do it for me, but it turned on something in me that sparked that accelerated healing. I've since come to understand what that is. At the time, I was like, oh, okay. So anyway, we launched a very good and a beautiful relationship with the coMra people at this point. And Garrett, as my guide at that time, educated and walked me through and supported and helped me really come to fully use it, integrated in the practice. So that's how I came to it. But that was a very short period of time. Like, within a few months, I would say I was full on and supporting it and participating in all the good stuff. So that's my coMra introduction. And since then, I've used it personally. We use it all the time for lots of things, lots of different reasons. I'm always encouraging people to take health into their own hands, and coMra is a large part of that for a good percentage of my patients. Yeah.
Lola, being a physiotherapist or physical therapist, I often, when I'm talking to physical therapists, I often get the response of, all right, I see it has all the modalities that are usually used in physiotherapy. It's the magnet, it's the laser, it's the ultrasound, it's light. But I don't understand why and what is the benefit of combining them in one device. And I don't need it because I have my magnets, I have my laser here, I have my ultrasound. What would be your advice or your answer to such a comment?
Yeah. Well, I full disclosure, I think I made that same comment myself early on.
Okay.
With Garrett. I said, I have a laser. I have all that. Why? So what I would say is it's probably beyond my ability to fully explain it in any way, honestly. I don't know enough about the body to know what it's doing. I don't know enough about each of those modalities other than the technicalities that we all know. We can read about them and say, but there is something, again, about the coherence, about the combination of I want to say forces or of energies that each speak on their own. So I think on one level, I'm going to answer this. I'm going to do a little sidestep here, Mikhail, because it would be similar to saying, well, why not just physical therapies, or why not just spiritual practice, or why not just psychological therapy? But when we combine them together, we've got this synergistic result that we don't get individually. The same whether it's people. If you've got a team working on a problem, you've got diversity, you've got the beauty of that expression that cannot be done singularly. And the same with coMra. I said, when we put the 4 radiances together and you combine, there's a 5th radiance in there. Actually, there's gazillion, but let's say the 5th radiance of the therapist, which of course is very integral to this whole process, then you've got like a team effort as opposed to an individual effort on each one. And it's that combination that is the mystery for me. I'm sure someone will have the science, but I think we don't know what we can do better in cooperation than we can do individually. So when I'm speaking to a colleague, I might say, you know what, don't take my word for it. Just try it. Try it for a while and see what results you get. Because we're results oriented, right? We're science minded. And that says, I got to see the proof. Well, I've given that notion up a long time ago, needing to have things proven or explained, because 99.9% of the universe is unexplainable to me. So why not just go with a little bit of faith and watch the results? And that's where I would coach. It's a hard sell, I must say myself, that not all of my colleagues have embraced this, but the ones who have, beautiful practices and beautiful development as human beings as well. That's the beauty of it.
You know, there is a very clear scientific explanation beyond coMra, as you mentioned, and yeah, I mean, and I know it, I've seen it, I heard it many times. So you know about the cooperation between the different modalities, and that you need a lower power laser because it's supported by the magnet, by the functions of the other elements as well. But this has actually never been the very reason why coMra has been working so well for me. You know, there is so, as you said, there is so much this mystery beyond that, and this mystery has always been, in my case, explained through comparison with something else, through parallels. And my own parallel for coMra therapy and the effect of coherence, because this coherence as well is something which is very mysterious. So what is this coherence, you know? But I've always been feeling and explaining it to people when I speak about coMra, that the device, the Delta, actually brings coMra therapy, is like it reminds the organism, the cells, the state they used to be when they were in complete harmony, in complete health, in complete energy and high vibration, which is the usual state of the body of our beings. And through what we discussed so far throughout the podcast, we somehow get out of that center and centeredness through different processes that we are going through life. But coMra is able to remind ourselves on a very deep level, to our organisms, to our being, what it was, what it used to be like, and what it is to be back into that center. And by bringing that memory, the cells, or maybe even on a deeper level, something wakes up and basically feels a pull towards going back there. But it's been only reminded by coMra that this is your optimal state. You should go there. You should feel it again. So it's like a feeling. It's the same like when a mother is singing a song to her little child, and the child falls asleep, because in her voice there is all love, warmth, strength, intent, all memories that the child has been having so far with her mother, you know, everything in one package coming out through her voice in that song. And that's why just a lovely mother song to her child could actually reach and make miracles and can heal the child. And in the same way, this coMra and what is coming out of coMra, of the Delta, is like this song of the mother to her child. So this has been my explanation, how I've been explaining coMra. Beyond, yeah, you have the laser cooperating with the magnet, and I mean, it's so much on the surface, so much on the surface. So that's my understanding of the miracle of coMra, the mystery of coMra.
That's so beautiful. I just love hearing that. I'm going to listen to that piece over. Being a mother myself, I totally understand that. There is no explanation for that, really, other than to know. I call that attunement. What you
Attunement.
described is attunement,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Yeah.
That's a
And when,
nice word, a very precise word, attunement. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And there's no teaching attunement, really. It's a felt sense, and it's a knowing that goes beyond what we can think about it and learn. You can't, but you can model it, you can show it, you can express it, but you can't really teach it in a sense, like this is how you do it, right? It's a felt sense.
Yeah.
And I think what you tuned into there, which was really, really beautiful, was it's where poetry and art go, right? In terms of we don't know why these touch us in the ways they do, but they speak a language that defies words sometimes. I say a language, but it's more a feeling. It's an intuitive feeling. It's a knowing. It's a part of us that, as you said so beautifully, is reawakened with these offerings, I suppose, the Delta or whatever, any of some of the other therapies that are done. They're all working with the same beautiful intelligence system. And I think that's, again, we've circled all the way back to this, I get out of the way as a therapist, right? And really support this this masterpiece. It would be like, I wouldn't go up to some masterful painting and say, oh, I think there's too much red over here. I think I'm going to put a little green. I think we'd leave it alone and just support it and keep it in its pristine condition. And I think that's what really all of these things are doing, if they're working at that level of intelligence. So,
Well, the painting is a very good comparison and a parallel as well, because I think that as well, I believe that each of us has the artisan or the artist in ourselves, and it's only that somebody can teach you a particular or specific painting technique that you can use in order to express yourself. But nobody can really teach you to draw or to paint. I mean, we all have it in ourselves. It is just somebody can lead you, can guide you in order to open up that talent or that ability. So it makes sense in all different areas of life. So I'm very much in getting in touch with now with how you mean and what you mean by saying you have transformed into a guide from a therapist.
yeah. Well, and I think there's something else too, is that to develop us, this was another thing that I was shown early with my very first mentor of traditional Chinese medicine. He was also an artist. He is an artist. And he said that we must develop that aspect of our brains. We have to be artists, whatever it is you want to do, to develop this other part. So again, it was this constant integration of all of our talents and abilities. And we're all creators. I mean, we couldn't heal anything if we weren't a creator, if you think about it, right? You had to produce whatever it's required to heal the scratch or the wound. So we're always creating within ourselves. And then when there's that outward expression, and thankfully we have these gifted people around us that can actually put it into a masterpiece or into a poem or into a beautiful piece of something that can actually show us our potential. And this is the mirror, right? We see around us what we have within us. And that's the beauty of any of this. And I guess as you were talking about the Delta and the coMra being this possibility, when it's introduced in that way initially, it might threaten some people, like, oh my goodness, this is a load of bullshit, as you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you have that relationship with that person, and I think this is the other key piece that I said, that the fifth radiance with coMra therapy, I think it works well with it just by itself. But you add just a little bit more of this understanding of the completeness or the more holistic perspective in with it, and you can have that relationship with your patient again, or your family member, whoever it is, that that's maybe the key sometimes. The peace, the relationship is the peace. There's the trust. There's the, all those things that come before we can open our mind and our hearts to something. We have to have some kind of connection with another human being. And even the delta, I've talked to it. I call the palm my little buddy. I say, okay, buddy, we've got some work to do here. I talk to it like it's hurting me. And that I think is integral too in any successful outcome. Is there has to be some kind of a relationality between it all. So
absolutely, absolutely. Lola, so where to from here? What do you think is the future of health and healing? I mean, I know that you touched upon that already at the beginning by saying that we are growing out of age, and the understanding of healing as well is growing out of age. But can you expand a little bit more on that? What do you think? What future of healing and health do you envision?
Well, I've given a lot of thought to this actually, and I'm kind of the mind that there's a group of people who will carry on, however, the way they've been trained and conditioned and are not interested. They are, I don't want to, try and be mathematical, but I'm guessing, and using some other people's work as a reference, you're about a third of the population just will not even hear this conversation. They won't even be remotely interested. And that is perfectly fine. That would be like saying, okay, preschool understanding of holistic therapy is that. Leave it be. Blessings, There's a middle ground where people are still, walking between the worlds. And they are the most, how can I say, interesting group to me, because they have the potential to discover more and to become more of their own strength and self. And then there's a group who already kind of get it and they're on their way. And it's easy, it's nice to support, and it's really cool to hang out with people who already sort of understand this potential of self. So where do I see it going is that this middle group will expand so that the percentages will become, instead of maybe a third, maybe it'll become a third, edging toward this larger group of people who really understand this. How I see it, I see us returning to basics, returning back to understanding good food is your first medicine. If you don't get that, forget everything else, really and truly. And this is one of the principles, actually, primary principles of Chinese medicine is food is your first medicine. So if you're taking in, toxic food or wrong food or whatever it is, you can't be healthy. Try as you will not be healthy. So there's education, and we're returning to basics. We're returning in this world how to grow a garden. You'd think everybody would know how, but in this part of the world, people don't even know where food comes from, which is shocking to me. But we have to return to these basics. And then also some of the old learning that we've given up because we thought it was too hokey or whatever. I walk through the forest with my grandkids and say, this is really good if you have a sore tummy. See this plant over here? Like going back to teaching. So I see myself in this role now of trying to pass on some of this back around, because it's otherwise lost. And what point do you tap when you have a headache, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What, this acupressure or something, you can tap, or you can take a deep breath and you can feel really, really calm before you go to sleep. I mean, is that medicine, or is that just attunement to ourselves again? Right? So I see it going back. I think it was Einstein said there might be a third world war, but the fourth one will be fought with sticks and clubs or something.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it with medicine, is we can have these wars with medicine, but we'll always come back to this very basic, what Earth provides us, what, call it Mother Earth, or our own selves will provide. So the future, it might be fantastic where we can wave a wand of, energy over somebody and heal them. But I really, truly, truly believe in my own heart, we're going to go back to the very roots, the indigenous ways of healing, the traditional ways of healing before we embark, or we can fully embrace the more, amazing stuff like technology, I think we have to. So that's where I see it going.
Very nice.
Back to the Future. No, how was that show? Back
to the Future. Yeah. Lola, on that note, what would be your closing message to all people that are struggling to achieve lasting health and well-being in their lives?
Well, it's quite simple. It's a simple statement, and it's maybe not so simple to achieve, but it's learn to love yourself. Learn to love your beautiful self, your mastery, your brilliance, your unique intelligence. And that might include some parts that aren't all that attractive and you don't like very much, but learn to love yourself. And from that love from within, it's so easy to express it outwardly and to see the beauty in everything and everyone and every piece of creation. So it's quite simple. It's not even medicine to me, but it is the most healing of all practices I've ever done, is learn to love this piece. And I don't mean it in some egoic or arrogant way. I just mean, wow, this is amazing. So if I can leave anyone with anything, is if you forget anything or any of this, just remember to put your hand on your heart and just say, yummy. Yeah. Just love yourself as who you are and all your trials and tribulations. And a dear friend put it this way: through all the blood, sweat, and the tears, you have arrived at where you are. And that's a beautiful place. There's a lot of joy in recognizing that. So that's it.
Lovely. Lola, thank you so much. Thank you. It's been a very nice conversation. It's been lovely to talk to you and to delve deeper into healing and therapy and healing beyond the physical and so on. So many things we touched upon. So thank you for being my guest in Healing with Coherence podcast.
Oh, thank you for asking me. And Mikhail, know that the work you're doing is really important and valuable. And thank you for all of your good input. I found myself, again, in that state of awe often, and how when we get together, we understand so much more. So thank you for your part and allowing me to share your time. It was really, really sweet. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's always an inspiration when I speak to people with which I vibrate on the same frequency. Things get along very well. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Dear friends, thank you very much for watching till the end and listening till the end. This is Healing with Coherence podcast by Radiant Life Technologies. As I said at the beginning, we are on all major social media and podcast platforms. We are on YouTube. So if you have not yet subscribed, press that subscribe or follow button right now and be part of our community. There are other episodes before this one which you can listen to and watch on YouTube if you haven't done so yet. And I'll be looking forward to introducing you our next guest very soon. So stay tuned in. Thank you. And Lola, thank you again. Have a great day. And everyone as well, have a good day. Bye-bye.